Hi, I'm Paul. I'm the founder of RedTrouserDay, which is a fun event set up for a very serious purpose. I would like to introduce you to Shanahwaz, who is one of the surgeons at the Royal Marsden who's helped me through my own personal journey, who's going to explain to you the condition I had and why our campaign is raising very important funds for their research.
Hello, my name is Shanahwaz Rasheed. I'm a colorectal surgeon at the Royal Marsden Hospital, as well as being an academic surgeon based at Imperial College London. So my main responsibility is looking after people either for diagnosis or treatment of people with colorectal cancer. Now, colorectal cancer is an extremely common problem relative to other cancers. It's the fourth most commonly diagnosed cancer in the UK and results in being the second most common killer from cancer in the UK as well. Because of that, it's very important to diagnose it early because that makes a huge difference in terms of outcome. We know very clearly that colorectal cancer in almost everybody starts off as a pre-malignant condition whereby you get a polyp formation which then progresses and forms cancer. So if we can detect it in an early stage before it becomes cancer, then it's eminently treatable and in fact curable. Now, even once it's become cancer, then it's still treatable and even curable if detected early enough. And that's the absolute key when it comes to bowel cancer. Now, when people say bowel cancer, that actually normally means colon or rectum cancer. So the intestine is a long structure that goes all the way from the mouth all the way down to the anal canal. The bit that people talk about when they mean colorectal cancer is the large intestine and the rectum, which is the sort of third bit of the whole the whole intestinal tract. Now, the detection of it really depends on people having an index of suspicion for bowel cancer, and the two most common symptoms are bleeding through the anal canal and a change of your bowel habit. So if one were to have these, it's really important to go to one's GP and have the relevant tests and then be referred to someone like me for further tests. And those tests sound quite horrid sometimes. You think, oh my goodness, what are people going to do? Are they going to examine me in horrible places? Are they going to put tubes inside me? And yes, that does make up part of it, but the detection and early management of these problems makes an enormous difference in terms of outcome. Now, one of our patients over the last few years is Paul Finch. Now, Paul came to us with a diagnosis of bowel cancer already made. When he came to us, he was extremely anxious, as would anybody be with such a diagnosis. When we saw him, part of the management of anybody with this problem is the physical element of it, the diagnosis and then treatment from a clinical point of view. But as important is always going to be treating people as a human being. And for us, that's a significantly important part of it, and that means emotional support and psychological support. The word cancer is really scary for anybody, for all of us. And many of us, if not all of us, will know somebody who's had a diagnosis like that and had treatment for it. So when people have that diagnosis, there's a huge emotional and psychological part of it, as well as the big fear that comes along with that very word. So when Paul came to us, he had a confirmed diagnosis. We repeated some further tests on him, and then we sent him for further treatment. Now, the first treatment for him was a treatment with a combination of chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Now, for most people, then that would then lead on to surgery. But with Paul, we were very, very fortunate in that the tumour changed from being an actual cancer to scar tissue. And therefore, he has been under surveillance ever since. And we're very pleased to say that at his last checkup very recently, there's no evidence of cancer present now. Despite that, he's gone through a huge emotional journey and still is on that journey now. And that's resulted in him coming back to examinations, for scans, and each time he comes up, he has the same fears and the same worries and is reminded of how he felt 2 years ago when he first came in. And that's the same for everybody in that condition. Now, what we do here at the Marsden is we do look after people from a physical point of view. Some people need operations, some people need other treatments like chemotherapy or radiotherapy, and some people just need to be monitored and surveyed. across the board, it's essential to look after people as human beings and treat them as individuals. Even though the pathology might be similar, the person is different, and they're coloured by their own experiences, their own background, the people they might have come across over their whole lives. And so rather than see it as a conveyor belt of people with these problems, it's about looking at each and every person as an individual and treating them like that. And I think that we do that very well here at the Royal Marsden Hospital. Now, in terms of treatment, we're looking at various different ways, both in terms of how you approach the problem, and that starts off at the diagnosis stage. We've got a very extensive research program with research fellows looking at different aspects of how you diagnose, how you stage people with these problems, and then how you treat them. If we could find a blood test, for example, that we could do on everybody that would highlight the problem before they present with symptoms, then you could potentially pick up these problems even before they become cancer, and you could treat them very, very early. And so we've got a big research program looking at a particular blood test, and we've got people in laboratories testing to see whether a particular blood test can diagnose and treat these problems before they become a major problem. From an operative point of view, we've also been very fortunate in having a surgical robot. Now, in the old days, when I first started doing this kind of operations, it was a great big cut down the middle of the tummy. It was a big physiological stress on people. But over the last 20 years or so, we've now moved towards minimally invasive surgery, which means putting smaller holes in people's tummies, removing the tumour as one would do previously, and it results in less of a strain on somebody having this kind of surgery. The traditional minimally invasive approach was what we called laparoscopic surgery, which meant camera inside people's tummy and then using instruments in order to separate the tumour from the rest of the bowel, removing it and joining up the bowel from end to end. Over the last couple of years, we've now developed the use of the surgical robot, the Da Vinci surgical robot, in terms of managing bowel cancers, and that gives us a higher level of precision, and people undergoing that surgery then can get through it in a much easier way for them, meaning that they can leave hospital earlier, they have less effect on their functioning, and they can even return to work much more quickly. And so there's been significant advances in that approach. Now again, here we've got research people looking at whether we can really prove that the robotic approach is at least as good, if not better, than the standard approaches, and that requires a fair amount of research. In addition to that, we're also looking at various effects on people, both from a physiological as well as a psychological and emotional perspective. Now, as I said earlier, this is a very complicated affair for somebody to go through these treatments, and we're looking at what is the effect on people from a quality of life perspective, and how they can then return back to their life as normally as possible. So Paul developed this idea of having a program where we could raise money and we could look into various different aspects of research. I mean, he's been absolutely amazing, as has many of his friends and people who have known him. And he's driven by the one thing, that how can we make it better? How can we improve the lives of people before diagnosis, after diagnosis, through treatment, and then following that? So I would like to urge you to please consider being part of this and consider supporting us during this process. Thank you.
Red Trouser Day was started on the back of a bit of fun with my sons, who were challenging me one evening as to why I was wearing red trousers. That bit of fun converted on that occasion into a fun night out where we raised £1,200 and I donated it towards the cause of bowel cancer. From that little idea has become a massive campaign, and I cannot believe the amount of money we've raised this year, and I just wanted to say a big thank you from the bottom of my heart to everybody that's helped support this. I think we've started something that's got longevity, and I'm hoping that each year we will raise in excess of £100,000 a year. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for supporting this, and I look forward to seeing that support continue into next year. Thank you.